Long before ethnic cleansing began in Bosnia, it had already started in Kosovo. Since at least February 1990, Serbian police and paramilitary units have brutally repressed Albanian strikes and protests. The Serbs have closed Albanian schools, courts, and newspapers. 60,000 Serbian army troops have reportedly turned Pristina, Kosovo's capital, into an armed camp. Some 2 million Albanians make up a large majority of Kosovo's population, 85 to 90%. Yet they no longer have the right to study or even to have street signs in their own language. As in Bosnia, Serb forces in Kosovo appear to be engaged in a deliberate campaign to terrorize the Albanian majority. The current tensions go back just a couple of decades to the Tito era. In 1974, Yugoslavia's communist leader recognized the Albanian majority in Kosovo by granting the province autonomy from Serbia. But Serbs, both in Kosovo and in Serbia itself, could never accept Tito's decision. They view Muslims as infidels, and Kosovo as the cradle of their civilization, where Christianity was first introduced to the Serbs nearly 2,000 years ago. The Serbs' resentment toward the Albanians reached a crescendo in 1989, when Serbs by the hundreds of thousands converged on an ancient battlefield to commemorate the Battle of Kosovo. Serbia lost that battle 600 years ago, but the loss to an invading army of Muslim Turks is still a symbol to the Serbian nation, and Orthodox Serbs have vowed to avenge their defeat ever since. Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic, long a communist functionary, saw the rising tide of Serbian nationalism as a political opportunity. He promised to revoke Kosovo's autonomy and reassert Serb control over Kosovo's police and political institutions. It was in Kosovo where the Serbs moved first to redress their long-standing grievances. This tape, smuggled out of the country, shows the aftermath of a 1991 police raid on several private homes in Kosovo. 36 Albanians were reportedly arrested, some of them beaten, their homes destroyed. Albanians call what's happening to them quiet ethnic cleansing. Unlike Bosnia, Serb forces in Kosovo have not yet laid siege to cities or moved whole populations out of rural areas. Instead, they've set up a police state to intimidate and terrorize the Albanian majority. In one particularly gruesome incident, hundreds of Albanian school children were hospitalized in 1990 after being stricken by a mysterious illness. Albanian leaders accused the Serbs of using military gas to poison the children. The incident, they say, marked the beginning of the Serb campaign to force Albanians to leave and thus reverse the ethnic and religious balance in Kosovo. Joseph DioGuardi is president of the Albanian American Civic League. He vehemently denies Albanians ever systematically persecuted the Serbs in Kosovo.
They have used the propaganda of individual incidents to say that this was institutional against the Serbian people. There's a big difference here. What you see happening to the Albanian people is institutional. This is a state-run institutional policy of discrimination, of torture, of maiming, of raping, of human rights violations, of taking away freedom of the press, freedom of the assembly. This is not one or two incidents.
How strong you are as a people. There are today...
Few American officials have ever visited Kosovo, but in 1989, Congressman Tom Lantos and DioGuardi were two of the first. Their van was mobbed by pro-American demonstrators, most of them Albanians hoping for protection from the United States.
And certainly since 1989, when we saw Slobodan Milosevic march with his troops into Kosovo.
DioGuardi now has his own radio program in New York, broadcasting news and comment about events in the Balkans. He believes Milosevic and the Serbs are now stepping up the pressure in Kosovo, deliberately trying to polarize the situation and undermine Albanian leader Ibrahim Rugova, who's urged Albanians not to take up arms.
My greatest fear is that some group of Albanians will now say the foreign policy of the Republic of Kosovo has not worked. thank you, Dr. Rugova, for what you've done. You're a great leader, but we cannot take any more of this. And at that point, they may somehow, who knows, get some weapons. I don't believe they have any weapons, but God forbid they decide to fire back. You will then see the fuse ignite in Kosovo to give the Serbs what they've been looking for since April of 1989, and that's an excuse to massacre this population of 2 million defenseless Albanians who've been looking for democracy since 1989.
Yes.
Have you discussed with Mr. Lantos, or are you familiar with the guy?
The Congressional Human Rights Caucus is very pleased to open this hearing on human rights issues in Yugoslavia. The most distinguished member of the Congressional Human Rights Caucus, a member of its executive committee, and an indefatigable fighter for human rights for many years, the Honorable Joe DioGuardi.
The term crime of apartheid is defined, and it shall apply to inhuman acts committed for the purpose of establishing and maintaining domination of one racial group of persons over any other group of persons, or systematically oppressing them. That is what has gone on in South Africa. That is what's going on right now in Kosovo, even as we speak, because the state of emergency has not been lifted. That's what they said. Let's see what they're really doing. And they don't let too many people in to see what they're doing. I went there twice. I could not meet with the press. I was forced out of the hotel in Pristina, forced to do a press conference on the street, and they threatened to arrest me for a public display because that was against their law. You cannot talk on their streets. It's incredible that a system like this exists in the world today when there are 2 million, by their count, Albanians in that province, over 90%, and they want to emasculate them in every way.
Mr. DioGuardi made some very strong statements.
Well,
you
let me
made
say
a
this.
statement.
I made a statement because I obviously am talking about Serbia, not Slovenia, not Croatia, not Bosnia.
I'm talking-
because those republics are doing a
Mr.
good job.
DioGuardi, I asked you a specific question, and that question concerned the rise of the decrease of communism all over Yugoslavia.
Which I applaud,
Yeah,
except in Serbia.
Right. And this problem is now rising. I'm asking you, were the conditions under Tito better? Since that is when communists really reigned.
Let me say this. I didn't spend much time studying Tito in my history books. I was studying
Too
Patrick
bad.
Henry, Thomas Paine, and I could say this, that recently I've spent a lot of time studying Mr. Milosevic. And let me tell you, he doesn't do himself or his people justice. I met with many prominent Serbs and had many good conversations with them in Belgrade, but the kind of political rancor he is creating for his own personal ambitions will be the undoing of his great republic and the undoing of Yugoslavia if he persists.
Yeah.
We have to
Mr.
go.
DioGuardi, you
what
made
is-
some very
Yeah.
inflammatory
I
statements
did,
here.
because Mr.
And I am
Milosevic
now
has been very
asking for
inflammatory
some-
against the Albanians, and someone has to speak up against them. And thank God we have the Congress of the United States to stand up for oppressed people,
Well,
including the Kosovars.
Yes, but Mr. DioGuardi, you need to be accurate when you're a witness, especially when you're a lobbyist for a group.
I'm an ethnic
Now, you have
Albanian.
to be
I'm an ethnic
accurate.
Albanian. I'm an ethnic Albanian. I'm the president of the Albanian American Civic League and the Albanian American Foundation, and I resent those intonations.
Free Kosovo! 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 Free Kosovo!
He was there for us in the beginning. He's been there for us all the way, and he is no doubt in my mind the most important person we have
for changing the misguided policy of our State Department that is trying to stay neutral today on the issue of human rights in Kosovo. So I give you that great senator from Kansas, Senator Bob Dole. Go! Go!
How many thousand people do you have? 10,000. Yeah. A lot of people on the grass all the way back.
Free Kosovo! 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 Free Kosovo!
All these American flags, isn't that beautiful?
Free Kosovo! Free Kosovo!
These are the terrorists, so-called terrorists.
Free Kosovo! Free Kosovo! Free Kosovo!
Well, let me say, first of all, I'm very honored to be here. Very honored to be with my good friend Joe DioGuardi and many others who are in the audience. And I believe in freedom, and I believe in human rights, and I believe it ought to happen in Kosovo at the earliest possible time. We cannot let people be subject to tyranny anymore, oppression anymore. People are entitled to their freedom, they're entitled to their basic rights. And so I agree with the friend. Free Kosovo, and do it now. We're fortunate. Those of us who live here, Albanian Americans, wherever you may be from, we have democracy, but we want to make certain it's not denied, as I said earlier, to your friends and to your relatives and to your brothers and to your sisters and all the people in Albania, all the people in Kosovo. And I'll do my best, and I'm certain I can speak for many of my colleagues, regardless of their political party, whether Republicans or Democrats. We're in this together. We all either believe in democracy or we don't. And we believe in democracy just as you believe in democracy. And we'll be urging the State Department to take a tougher stand and take a proper stand for freedom and human rights everywhere in the world. Let's stop the oppression. Let's stop the abuse of human rights. Let's stand up for freedom everywhere, just as we stand up for freedom in America. Thank you very much. We'll be on your side.
Bob Dole! Bob Dole! Bob Dole! Bob Dole! Bob Dole!
Well, we're back here in the room that brought the first hearing to the Albanian people of Kosovo. This is the committee room for the International Relations Committee, and if you can pan around, you'll see Congressman Hyde's picture. He's the current chairman, and the former chairman, Congressman Gilman. These are Republicans, and you're going to see our Democrat friends today as well, Congressman Lantos. Why do I mention those three in particular? Because they're the ones that have consistently introduced the resolutions for the independence for Kosovo. And even this year, on January 5, Congressman Hyde and Congressman Lantos introduced HRES 24 for the independence of Kosovo now. And today, May 18th, we're having a hearing at which the U.S. State Department, the Bush administration, is going to disclose their policy on Kosovo. There was an article yesterday in the Washington Post that said that Bush has finally decided that we cannot wait any longer on Kosovo, and he's now going to start a process, hopefully ending in a year or two, where Kosovo would be independent. The State Department is not saying they support independence yet, but it's obvious that that's the only solution that's going to work, because that's what the Albanian people of Kosovo want. That's what they declared in their referendum in 1990 under international law. It's called self-determination. And today we have representatives of the Albanian people to make that case directly. One of the key representatives is Bishop Mark Sopi. He's with us. He's the bishop of the Catholic community, the diocese in Prizren, and he's going to tell us the reality of Albanians in Kosovo today. And welcome, Bishop, and we look forward to your testimony.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I will try to say the real situation in Kosovo.
Good, and we look forward to hearing your testimony. And Father Luis Giorgi.
He's going to be testifying. He's the official biographer of Mother Teresa.
Dëshirojmë nëpërmes Nallës Tereze ta paraqisim kishën dhe popullin ton për paqe dhe bashkëjetesë me të gjithë.
Thank you for being with us.
The Balkans region has been an area of tremendous concern since the early 1900s. In recent years, the attention of the United States has been diverted to other geostrategic priorities. However, 2005 is an exceptionally important year for the people of the Balkans. Today, this committee considers the most critical issue in the Balkans, the question of Kosovo. And now, Ms. DioGuardi.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for your leadership in holding this hearing, and also you and Congressman Lantos for introducing House Resolution 24 supporting the United States recognition of Kosovo's independence now. I think in order to address Kosovo's current economic and political status and U.S. foreign policy in the region, looking at final status in particular, we have to talk a little bit about the history for the last 2 decades of our administration. And with all due respect to Ambassador Burns, I cannot share his pride in the 20 years of activity on the part, or I should say perhaps inactivity on the part of the administration. As Congressman Dana Rohrabacher said earlier, we're a little late. It's very good what's happening now in terms of returning to the issue of the Balkans. But when we talk about pride, I think we have to talk about the House International Relations Committee. The House International Relations Committee can be proud because it has consistently responded to the conflict in the Southeast Europe in the last century, in the current century, consistently supported aspirations for freedom and democracy on the part of peoples in the region who suffered from almost 50 years of communism, and in the case of Albanians, from racism and genocide. If you go back 18 years, when this really began, the initiative in the House, it was Congressman Lantos and then Congressman DioGuardi that introduced with 57 colleagues H. Conres 162, which exposed the egregious abuse of human rights of Kosovo's Albanians and called for justice. Now, unfortunately, at that time, the State Department, under pressure from former colleagues and American friends of Slobodan Milosevic who had worked in the region, opposed every initiative by the House. And ultimately, Congressman Lantos and DioGuardi prevailed in getting a hearing. But what we see from 1989 on, after Milosevic invades and occupies Kosovo, we see a pattern that continued for a decade, and the consequences were really quite terrible. I mean, Vukovar gets attacked, House opposes it, the International Relations Committee opposes it, the administration doesn't act. Kosovo is occupied brutally, House opposes, Congressman Lantos introduces another resolution, the administration doesn't act. Bosnia is attacked. Concentration camps were concealed. 5 members of our State Department resign in opposition. Nothing happens. The only time there was an exception was when President George Herbert Walker Bush announced his Christmas warning in 1993, warning Slobodan Milosevic that if you start to move in on Kosovo in a military way, if you wage war, then you're going to be in trouble. There'll be dire consequences. But for the most part, State has just, embraced a policy of appeasement and containment. And then in February of '98, the Christmas warning was violated. And the Serbian military and paramilitary troops attacked Kosovo, raped, pillaged, and murdered their way across the country, so that by the time the United States was forced to lead NATO airstrikes against Serbia in March '99, Serbian military and paramilitary forces had killed more than 300,000 men, women, and children in Bosnia, at least 10,000 in Kosovo. A couple thousand are still missing, and had displaced more than 4 million people in Southeast Europe. Now, there was a short period of time from March until June of '99 when the airstrikes were being conducted. The Congress and the administration came together at that point and realized they were going to have to bring down Milosevic and his henchmen. And the American people broadly supported the government in that, especially as they saw Albanians being herded in cattle cars to the border and thrown into camps. However, When the war came to an end with the capitulation of Milosevic, the United States agreed to defer any decision regarding Kosovo's final status. And what you see at that point is a reemergence of the State Department's embrace of its historical Belgrade-centric attitude. And I think that the evidence, though, of the past 6 years is that delaying final status has been a mistake. And it's time for the administration to look at House Resolution 24 as the blueprint for going forward.
Thank you very much, Mrs. DioGuardi. Mr. Rohrbacher.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Joe and Shirley DioGuardi for the hard work that they put out on this issue and this cause over the years. And it's been vitally important that a group of people in desperate situations in another part of the world were given direction on how to state their case and how to make sure people understood what was going on through the very complicated democratic process in the United States. So I think Joe and Shirley have done a tremendous job in making sure that we got the picture of what was going on instead of a blurred picture of what was going on there. Ms. DioGuardi just mentioned the bugaboo of radical Islamic center right there in Europe. And let me ask, we have some Christian leaders here with us. Are you worried? You know what's going on among your fellow Kosovars, and you know that they're of another faith. Many of them are Muslims. Are you worried about radical Islam taking over in Kosovo and your faith being some way jeopardized by radical Muslims like you see in Iran or with bin Laden?
Ne nuk kemi frikë që me të vërtet dhe të vinë në islamizëm radikale. Por në qoftë se vazhdon një situatë e tillë, siç ka ardhur deri me tash, rrezikon me kapluar grupet e vogla, ndoshta edhe më zhvillu përpara, po përndryshe nuk frikohemi se do të kenë ose do të mund të vinë në islamizëm radikal.
We're absolutely not worried that it will ever come to the point that we'll be overtaken by radical Islam. But I do think that if the status quo, is prolonged forever, then small extremist groups could emerge, and that could threaten to some extent. But I still do not believe that it will ever come to the point that radical Islam will over.
So his answer is, the longer that we refrain from letting the people of Kosovo have their rights to run their own country, the greater the chance that there will be radicalism will rise up among Muslims.
Populli i Kosovës ka beson edhe mbështetet shumë në demokracinë perëndimore, veçanërisht në demokracinë e juaj amerikane.
The people that be true, I'd agree with you, and I'd also add that the people of Kosovo have always believed in democracy, and especially in the American democracy.
For the record, Mr. Chairman, we have leaders of the Christian leaders here with us, people who should, if anyone fears radical Islam in their country, it should be these people, because they represent their congregations, and they are here telling us that an independent Kosovo is the way to go to thwart radical Islam. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I thank you very much, Mr. Rohrbacher. We will thank this panel for your great contribution to this important subject, and we will stay in touch with you. I'm sure we'll be hearing more from each other. And thank you, Shirley, and give our best to Joe.
Congressman DioGuardi, we have to go further and deeper into this whole area. First of all, Milosevic wins in this deal. He stays in power.
Absolutely
he keeps
not.
his.
Why
Wait a minute.
do you think
have
he's
you
going to
read
stay in
this
power?
deal? Why do you think read this deal? He stays in power. He has his military. There's no penalty for his war crimes at all. The KLA, the people that agreed to autonomy, not independence, what they wanted, these are the people that really get screwed. These are the people that get disarmed in the process.
What makes you think this deal is going forward?
That's what the deal is.
Did you hear President Clinton what he said?
Are you kidding?
He said that we'll do nothing until all the Serb troops are out. And he's going to look at his actions, not his words.
I can't believe
at
you're
least
sitting here saying
Clinton.
this. This is a disaster. Let me tell you, this deal is done. You want to know why it's done?
It's not
done. Monica Lewinsky couldn't do it for 4 years. This guy's had his poll numbers up in the 60s. This 74-day war has brought his poll numbers to the 50s. He's scared to death. He's getting out for political reasons and to save Al Gore. And if you don't think that's a deal, you're wrong.
No legacy whatsoever.
He has no legacy.
Well, at
Monica
least he's going to have
Lewinsky, he has a legacy.
He's going to have this one,
apologize.
that he took down the second Nazi leader that we had in this century, Slobodan Milosevic.
But wait a minute, but I don't understand. You don't see this, Congressman. You're shocking me here tonight. You don't see. This is a done deal. I guarantee you, the president's made the deal.
You are naive.
I would say the same to you.
You think the Albanians will go back? The whole deal is to get the Albanians back.
Yes.
They will not go back if there's one Serb soldier left there.
But it doesn't matter. He's going to be in power. He's going to have his military. And Clinton wanted a deal because this is all politics
Can I say,
for him.
after what the Albanians have been through since Tito died, don't forget, this didn't start 2 years ago. It started in 1980, and then it was escalated in 1989 with the occupation. Do you think that the Albanians will stand by while Milosevic comes back to the table?
That Clinton has sold you out. Clinton has never been in this for principle. Clinton is in this. He's scared to death of his poll.
If they don't take Milosevic down, the Albanian people have learned from the Jewish people. They're going to go after him like they went after Adolf Eichmann. He's now been indicted.
And not only did Clinton win, in the process, we killed 2,000 innocent civilians. Killed them. Slaughtered them needlessly, and he's bailing out of this thing right now for nothing. This is the single greatest military debacle we've seen in this century.
The carnage here is devastating. Under a just war theory, this is not a just war. Nobody wins here. Unfortunately, we have a lot of civilians that have been killed, hospitals bombed, marketplaces bombed. The UN just came back from Kosovo surveying there. They found that 80% of the houses are destroyed, that most of the infrastructure is destroyed. We don't have a country to send these Albanians back to. We're going to have to start from scratch.
Congressman Joe DioGuardi, and he's the president of the Albanian American Civic League. Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, Senior Director for Foreign Policy and National Security at the Family Research Council. We're sitting here in the break. You say Slobo cried uncle, and I say Slobo won, and I'll tell you why I think he won. First of all, you notice there was no mention of his war crime prosecutions in the 12-point peace plan, none at all. And he gets to keep his military.
It's wrong.
Gets to keep his military.
Do you think that this is all a closed deal?
He got the ethnic Albanians. Let me finish. He got the ethnic Albanians out. He got the bombing to stop, and he got his opposition disarmed. How could you not declare that anything but a full victory for Slobo?
Do you see what he did to Yugoslavia? Look at the infrastructure. No bridges, no trains, no electricity.
The people
the food is disappearing.
The people that wanted out are
jump
gone.
on him like the Ceausescus would jump on by the
punishment for him?
Yeah, but his people are not overthrowing him.
If NATO doesn't take him down, the Albanians will get him like the Jews got Eichmann.
You're dreaming.
They will.
He still has his military, Congressman.
What military? They're deserting like rats right now in Kosovo.
U podršci albanskom separatizmu i terorizmu na Kosovu i Metohiji posebno se angažovala albanska emigracija u zemljama Zapadne Europe i SAD. U Americi je 86. godine još osnovano Albansko-američka civilna liga pod predsjedništvom uticajnog kongresmena Josefa DioGuardija, čiji je zadatak bio da aktivno lobira na Capitol Hillu za zahteve i ciljeve kosovskih Albanaca. Aktivnim lobiranjem Liga je otvorila put kosovsko-metohijskim separatistima za zvanične kontakte u Američkom senatu i Kongresu. U svakom slučaju, Albansko-američka civilna liga je u mnogome doprinela sistematskom širenju antisrpskog raspoloženja i satanizaciji srpskog naroda u američkoj javnosti.
Hello, I'm former Congressman Joe DioGuardi, the president of the Albanian American Civic League. You have just heard former Serbian dictator and indicted war criminal Slobodan Milosevic misrepresent our important work in Washington to free Kosovo and all Albanians from the tyranny of his regime.
You can help us and all Albanians by becoming a member of the Albanian American Civic League by visiting the website of the Albanian American Civic League.